Do you ever like read a book and then wonder why no one else is talking about it? Like, this was so good. Why is no one else talking about it? That was how I felt after I read The Monsters of Verity, which is a YA duology by VE Schwab, and I read it for a Schwabtober. I will link that whole long ass vlog. It's 2 hours. Get yourself a snack. But I read this for Schwabtober and I was like, why is no one else talking about this? Like, this is freaking fantastic. Like, this is such a good YA series that I never see anyone talking about. So I decided I wanted to talk about it. And that is why we are here. I am going to do a full spoiler-free review of both books in the Monsters of Verity duology. The Monsters of Verity duology, like I said, is a YA book written by VE Schwab under her name VE Schwab. And what it is it is set in this world where violence creates monsters. We follow two people from two different sides of this city where monsters just roam. And our one main character is Kate, and she is the daughter of basically the mob boss on the north side of the city. He is the person that controls everything. He controls the monsters. He controls your protection. Basically, if you can pay him, you are safe from the monsters, and if you cannot, then you're not. He is the mob, and he controls all the monsters on the north side of the city. Kate wants nothing more than to impress her father. She wants to take over, basically. So she just kind of acts like this little badass in order to impress him, but it's not really who she is. She's just trying so hard to be who her father wants her to be. And then we also follow August, and he is our character from the south side of the city. He is basically the polar opposite of Kate. He is the son of basically the head of the resistance that lives on the south side. They are trying to keep monsters in check and eliminated. They're trying to protect people and protect humanity. But August is a little different because August is a monster who longs to be human. So our story really begins in this Savage song when Kate comes back into town and starts going to this like local school in the north side of the city. August is ended up being sent to this school by his family in order to kind of get reconnaissance and spy on Kate so they can kind of have a one-up in their rebellion and trying to like overthrow the boss of the north side of the city. While they're there, obviously things don't really go to plan. Do they ever in any of these books just like go to plan? He ends up becoming friends with Kate, and she ends up really liking him. He likes her in a very platonic friendship way that is so lovely and refreshing to read about in a YA book. It's just great to not see any romance at all in this book. Like, I loved that part. Well, obviously they become friends, you know, shit happens, and that's just kind of what sets the story off. Like, obviously they shouldn't be friends. She needs to kill him, he needs to kill her, but do they really want to? They end up working together. It's such a cool premise of this story. One thing that I liked probably the most, and this is gonna sound super weird, is actually what inspired this book. And if you look on, it's in the front cover, they have a quote from Victor Vale from Vicious. And it says, "Plenty of humans are monstrous, and plenty of monsters know how to play human." Victor Vale. I ended up reading kind of like a little author interview with VE Schwab after I saw that, And the fact that that quote from Vicious inspired her to write this entire duology was really fascinating to me. I just thought that was so cool that she took a piece of one of her other worlds and used it to inspire a whole another world, which I just eat that kind of stuff up. Okay? So, in this world, like I said, we have monsters, and violence is what creates these monsters. Different types of violence create different types of monsters. We have 3 types. They are the Corsai, then the Malachi, and then the Sunai. And our first type is the Corsai. That one is just basic violence, I guess. It's your beatings and muggings and anything that does like extreme bodily harm but not death. So these monsters are like your mindless like shadow creatures that hunt at night, and they just rip you apart, and they're not really easy to control. They're just very hive-minded, so they don't have a whole lot of sentience, but they do speak, but it's very like break bones, break bones, break bones. Like that's kind of how it's shown. Like that's literally like some of the lines from it. Break, rip, crush, break, rip, crush. And it's just like, that's how they speak. So they're not extremely sentient beings. And then we have the Malachi, who are created through murder, through or more violent acts that result in murder. And these are more sentient beings. They are highly intelligent, and they're basically vampires. They're kind of like this world's vampires. They suck blood. They can go in the light, but it hurts them. Like, it's not very pleasant, but they can be in indirect light. So they're not like burst into flames type vampires, but they're also not like sparkly vampires. And then we have the Sunai, which is the type of monster that August is, along with a couple others in this book that we deem his like siblings. A Sunai is created by a mass violent act. So like August, for example, was created through a like mass school shooting. And these are the kind of acts that it takes to create a Sunai, and they're very, very rare. There's only 3 of them known in this book. So they're very, very rare. They look like humans. They pass for human. They're not driven mad by violence and killing. What they do is they play music, and each one can play like a different type of music. August is drawn to the violin, whereas his sister is drawn to singing, and his brother, I forget what Leo is drawn to. I want to say it's like drums, but I honestly don't remember because we don't see him perform music much. And then in the second book, there is a Sunai that is drawn to the flute, and they use the flute. But what they do basically is they play a song, and this song draws a human soul to the surface. If the human soul is pure, then it's fine. Like, everything's good. If the human soul is stained with violence as a sinner, then the Sunai can and will basically kill you. They will reap your soul. So that's kind of their purpose, is to like reap the souls of those who have sinned and those who have basically created monsters. But the Sunai in this book, they don't, while they do appear human, that is not their true form. They are monsters, and basically if they go too long without consuming a soul, they will go dark. They will basically go nuclear and just explode into their true form and kind of cause all this damage and havoc and death. So they really try not to do that, but August doesn't like consuming souls. Even though they are sinners, he does not want to do that. He wants to be as close to human as possible, and that is a lot of his internal struggle, and I really enjoy that. I enjoy seeing his internal struggle with what he is and what he wants to be, and just how he deals with that throughout the book. Now I'm gonna go into my pros and cons because this wasn't a perfect series. While I did like both of them, I gave them both 4 stars. The Savage Song I loved. Our Dark Duet I liked slightly more, which I don't think is like the popular opinion. I think a lot of people liked the first one better, but I liked this one just a little bit more, and I'll kind of explain why in a little bit. The pros of this book, for one, is that it is very, very heavily like morally gray and ambiguous. And that's because like our main character is a monster, but is he monstrous? Our main girl is human, but she might be a monster. Like, she's not the best person, like, at all. Her dad is a mob boss, like, and she's trying to impress him, so she's obviously not the best person. And while our monster August like wants to be human, he's still reaping souls of humans, so it's not like he's completely free and clear. And then we have his siblings, who are the 2 other Sunai, who are also very morally gray. His sister is very whimsical and she's very like soft-spoken, and then his brother is definitely more like military and combatant, and he is like the head of the rebellion on their side, and he is trying to tell August, you know, all these things about how to embrace his monstrous side and this and that, and he just wants nothing to do with it. But you know, he just wants him to embrace who he really is, like as a monster. Y'all know I love when it's not black and white. I love when morality is very gray. It's very relatable because not everything is black and white, good and bad. I like when there's that muddled area, and I think VE Schwab does that really well in pretty much all of her books. So that is definitely a pro for me. I also think that there is such a beautiful friendship in this book between August and Kate. I love that this is a YA series that does not delve heavily into romance at all. There's literally a kiss in book 2, but it's kind of like glossed over, like it's not a big thing. So I really appreciated the beautiful friendship that they have and that we get to explore in this, because it's not perfect. They don't always get along, but they are friends, and I love that about it. I wish we had more books, especially YA books, that showed just platonic friendship. I also thought the magic in this was super unique. The use of instruments in order to draw the soul to the surface, like the use of music as a weapon, is just super fascinating to me. I thought it was so well done, and I actually think that this would make a really cool musical. I had done a video recently about books I think would make good musicals. This one. This would make a fantastic musical because it's very based in music, and I would love to see the music of this like brought to life, because music is super, super important in this book. Not only to August, who uses it, you know, to draw souls out, it's also very important to Kate, because she is actually deaf in one ear, and she listens to music very, very loud in order to kind of relax because of the beat of it, and like they make that very prevalent throughout the story, which I think is really, really cool. I also really like how like the monsters are created, that, you know, violence begets violence, and that is kind of, you know, commentary on the real world. Violence begets violence. Like, when does it end? Like, how do we combat violence with more violence? And then the last pro thing that I really, really liked is the character growth. Between book 1 and 2, there is like an extreme amount of character growth, and it all makes sense. It's done in a really good way. The characters didn't just like glow up real quick. They they grew and they learned and they adapted to their surroundings and situations at hand. They had to change. Things had to happen. And some of it good, some of it not so good. You know, they both had to do some questionable things in the first book that makes you look at them like, wow, like which one of you is the human and which one of you is the monster? And I think that's kind of the point. And I really enjoyed the character growth throughout both books. I think it is just really well done. August coming into his own, Kate coming into her own, and just seeing the world through their eyes is just so good and so well done. Now, this book's not perfect. Like I said, I gave them both a 4-star. I really, really enjoyed them, but there were a couple things that I would have changed or that kind of like just bothered me a little bit, but they're definitely not like game changers. They're not like, you know, they're not deal breakers. I really, really enjoyed this series. Highly recommend that you pick it up. But there are some cons. For one, it kind of started a little slow for me. I get it. It's a fantasy book. I read a lot of high epic fantasies, and that's kind of my complaint about a lot of them is like, okay, it starts kind of slow, but it's fine. It starts slow, but it's a lot of building this world and getting used to the pronunciation and like the words, the names of the different monsters, how the city was split, you know, what kind of happened there, some backstory. So it's just more of that like info dumpy building of the world, which I don't mind, but it is kind of a con because it did make the start of the book a little bit slower. I also, you know, I mentioned in my prose that it's a wonderful platonic friendship, but in book 2 there is a very, very slight romantic subplot. It only takes place over a couple of pages. I just wasn't feeling that. I think it kind of made sense in where the plot was going and with the normal progression of how like teenagers would act. But it was just not my favorite. That little scene was just not my favorite. And thankfully it didn't get like explored. It didn't go any farther than like these couple pages. It was just a very quick, short little like romantic moment, I guess. But honestly, they could have left that out and I think the book would have been just fine without those couple pages at all. And the last con was probably the real reason that I brought down a full star in both books. And that is because the violence in this world that creates monsters is very black and white. And what I mean by that is nothing is taken into account when it comes to self-defense or anything where it's like you had no choice. It's not taken into account. If you kill someone, you are a sinner and your soul will get reaped by the Sunai. If you kill someone because they are coming to kill you, you are still a sinner and your soul will get reaped. At least that is how I understood it, because there's some moments in the book that I'm like, but really though? And it wasn't really explored as much as I would have liked it to. I would have liked that aspect to be explored more. I would have loved to see more of a struggle between, well, they killed because they had no choice. Does that merely make them a sinner? And there is slightly in book 2, it kind of comes around to that near the end of the book. We get some of that free will. It wasn't their choice. Like, they didn't do this by choice. They murdered because someone else was controlling them, kind of thing. But we don't really ever explore self-defense specifically, like killing to preserve your own life. And I really wish we would have, because I think it's just open to having that be explored, because it's something that would happen, right? Now, killing a monster doesn't taint your soul, but killing another human does. But if you kill a human because that human is coming to kill you, like, you're still tainted. Like, you can't even, the humans in the army cannot even kill the bad guys that are coming to kill them. Like, that's how deep it is. And that is like the one thing that brought it down like a whole star for me. Just wasn't feeling that and thought it should have been explored. Other than that though, this is a fantastic duology. I will say though, don't go into it thinking that it's gonna have a happy ending, because it doesn't. This ending I can see being very polarizing. I loved it. I loved the ending. It's not happy, but it's hopeful. It's not completely wrapped up in a beautiful bow, but everything is settled. And you still have that sense of completion while it's still slightly open and open to interpretation as to what happens next. It's, in my opinion, a very good ending to this duology. And that ending is what made me really appreciate our dark duet slightly more than this Savage song. I really think that they should be read pretty close together. Like, I just think that that is like kind of the best way to go at it, is to just read them both back to back, because you don't forget a lot. You get to like remember and absorb all the information, and it's just a really good way to read it. That is how I read it during this month. I read them pretty much back to back in the same month. But yes, I really, really enjoyed this series, and I would love to know if you have read this, what you think about it, like your pros and cons. Let me know. Let's have a discussion. If you plan on picking this up, let me know, because it's fantastic and I would love to see more people reading this one. All right, well, I'm Jessie. It has been so much fun talking with you guys. I will see you next time. Bye.